Welcome in, everybody, to the Shecago podcast. I'm Alexis Jade. I did my intro a little different than I normally do. Oh well, I'm rusty. How is everybody doing? I hope you're having a good weekend. I'm not sure how many people will be tuning in at 11 a.m. on a Sunday when there's no football on. I'm aware we might have a limited audience today, tuning in live at least. But for those of you who are here, I appreciate you. Full disclosure, don't have like a full outline for today's episode. Obviously, there's not a whole lot happening in the football world, but we do have some things happening. Training camp has officially begun for the entire NFL. Everyone is officially back at training camp, meaning the 2025-2026 NFL season is officially underway. It has taken eternity to get here. I feel like it's been 100 years. It's gone by quick on one hand for me because I've been watching some Australian Football League, so it's been keeping me entertained, keeping my sports craving in check. And I've also been working on stuff behind the scenes to make this season even better on my channel. I don't want to slack off anymore. I want to get this show on the road. So if you missed my post earlier, I made some changes, I guess, are coming to this channel that the Shecago podcast is on. If you're a podcast listener on Spotify, then maybe you don't know my YouTube channel, but on my YouTube channel, I do this Shecago podcast where we talk the Shecago Bears, and I do NFL live streams, so Bears games, primetime games, and I am now also, for those of you who don't know, a host on the Irish Bears Network on their Shecago Bears podcast. So if you missed that, last week was our first episode with the new crew, and I streamed part of it to my YouTube channel because we hadn't tested it before. So mid podcast episode, I started streaming it to this YouTube channel here as well. So going forward, I'm going to be doing that as well so that you guys can watch it from the beginning when I am live with the Irish Bears guys. And that's going to be a fun time. We have some stuff coming up. Obviously, even more Bears talk, Bears coverage, Bears everything. If you're a Bears fan, tune into that. And then on top of that, I have a new podcast coming out this week that is going to be for the ladies. It is a podcast about the NFL, about football, and the idea behind it is that it's for the girls. So you don't have to be a girl to watch it, but the idea is that maybe for the girls who just want to listen to girls talk about football, whether they're super knowledgeable or you're just getting into the sport and kind of want to learn more or just have fun and listen to a girl talk about football, that's what it's going to be. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to have some guests on that podcast as well. Hopefully over time, get some more female guests on that podcast within the industry and not in the industry. And yeah, so that's the happenings, but not that I'm trying to advertise everything from the get-go, but obviously there's not a whole lot of football stuff going on. So now is the time to start talking about what's coming for this channel and for future episodes here and elsewhere, I guess. But all that being said, the Bears did begin training camp this week. I believe we have 4 practices now in the books. Under the books, that's a new one. I talked about it on the podcast episode with the guys on the Irish Bears Network. So if you haven't checked it out, you can on my YouTube channel or their YouTube channel. And on there, we kind of discussed training camp and our expectations, some people we thought, might be cut and so on and so forth. But the gist from training camp, to kind of summarize it all, is that for the first 3 days, the offense was looking rough. And I know that a report came out later, not even a report, it was really a quote from Declan Doyle, the Bears offensive coordinator, basically stating how they're purposely, at least that one practice, the third practice, I believe, where Caleb was struggling mightily. I think he went an entire 7-on-7 without throwing a single completion. Where he basically said that, on some of those reps, they were purposely throwing pressure at him and letting Montez Sweat rush so that, Caleb would have to speed up his clock. And a lot of people have had mixed input. Some people think the media and fans really overreacted to the Bears training camp and Bears struggles and offensive struggles. And some people think that what Declan Doyle said is like, that makes sense. That adds up. That's why he's struggling so much. I think it's in the middle. I think if you're asking for my opinion on it, which I guess you are if you're watching this podcast, right? I think that, in my opinion, I don't think any of the media was really overdoing it. Now, that being said, I'm sure there are people, and those are just people I'm not following or haven't been watching. But at least people that I follow, like the people on CHGO or Courtney Cronin, people like that, Herb Howard, none of them, in my opinion, were really being super dramatic about it or overly reporting. And keep in mind, on day 3, Bears fans were able to go to the practice. So it was also Bears fans reporting what they saw. And I think they were just saying what they saw, which was that the offense didn't look good. Caleb was struggling, and that's what it was. And everyone's like, nobody panic. The offense is fine. We're 3 days in. You expect Caleb to be Tom Brady. And I'm like, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing anyone, at least in Bears world, maybe in the rest of the NFL media, but at least in the Bears fandom land, I'm not seeing anyone sitting here saying that Caleb Williams is supposed to be Tom Brady already, or that the offense should be clicking on all cylinders yet. I think what the media was reporting is just exactly what happened, and that Caleb was struggling and the offense was struggling, and they have a long way to go. And I do think that what Declan Doyle said about they were purposely testing Caleb is true, but I also think that that's not some riveting information or something we didn't already know. That's the case across the league every training camp. They are always doing stuff that we aren't super aware of, or the media is not super aware of. Like, the media doesn't know, we don't know on any given play during training camp what the intention is. We don't know what they're asking the quarterback to do. We don't know what they're asking the offensive line, the defensive line. We don't know any of that, right? All we know is what we see or get told. But that being said, I think what Declan Doyle said could excuse some of the struggles in the sense of maybe why it looks so bad the first 3 days. But I don't think it just automatically erases the struggles the offensive having what was specifically Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams, at least to me, okay, and now practice number 4, the one Bears fans were supposed to be able to be at, but then they canceled it due to bad weather. So it was just media. Apparently was a much better practice for Caleb and the Bears offense. Caleb performed a lot better, went well. Caleb threw a few touchdowns to Ramon Dunze, to Colson Loveland, and it sounded like it was a good practice. So that's good. That's improvement. But once again, we don't know what they were asking him to do. Maybe it was an easier day for the defense. I don't know. But okay, so part of me is a little jaded because as a Bears fan, I think every single season we have heard that the defense is ahead of the offense, and that's how it's supposed to be right now, and the offense is struggling. And on one hand, I'm like, of course, that makes sense. And also, this is a brand new system, brand new scheme. Like, it makes sense that it's rocky, everything else. Caleb's only a year 2 quarterback with a new system. Makes sense. On the flip side, I'm like, I'm tired of us making excuses for everything, though. Like, at some point, we just have to say, you know what? Caleb didn't look good at practice today, and it is what it is. But he's learning, but no one's panicking yet. But, let's also not just diminish everything. Because I recall last season when some reporters were noticing trends in Caleb, specifically during practice, that carried over to the regular season. So I think immediately shutting down anyone reporting what they're seeing at practice or trying to dismiss it, I think isn't necessary, because I think some of the stuff we're hearing, if it continues to be a pattern and a trend, maybe it's something to be aware of that we might see in the regular season. But also, we shouldn't be overreacting to anything either. And in my opinion, I don't think anyone is, but I'm sure there's a few out there. That being said, based on what I'm hearing at training camp so far, in my opinion, the areas that Caleb Williams needs to show improvement in is, I'm not worried about the interceptions he's throwing at practice or anything like that. Like, those things are going to happen. It's like I said, they're testing the offense, they're testing the defense, everything in between. And I don't really care about the interceptions. That's where mistakes happen. The areas I want to see Caleb have improvement are the areas he's struggling in right now, which is things like showing command of the offense, processing after the snap. From what it sounds like from Ben Johnson and Declan Doyle, that Caleb's gotten better at the pre-snap processing and adjustments, but it's now during the plays that his processing needs to speed up, and he's still a little slow. You would like to see that improve. I would like to see him scramble less during training camp, because you're not actually getting a pass rush. So sit in the pocket, go through your reads, even if you're a little slower. Now, of course, unless being instructed otherwise by coaching, if we're consistently seeing or hearing reports of Caleb scrambling and running out of bounds during 7-on-7s, I'm a bit like, okay, we shouldn't be doing that. Deep ball accuracy, I would like to see that cleaned up. That was one of his big faults last year. Areas of struggles, I should say. And the reason I say this too is because you hear reports now Tyson Bagent is playing against, and Casey Keenum, playing against second and third string. They're rotating. But something Declan Doyle complimented Tyson Bagent on is how smart he is, how prepared he is, and how he has command of the offense, and how he is able to move his eyes across the field quickly. And that's something Caleb struggles with, I think, particularly when it comes to the fact of turning his back to the defense, turning his head back around, and having to figure out where his eyes have to look. Considering he plays shotgun all of college, that's not something Caleb is used to anymore. So that's something that Tyson and Casey Keenum have on Caleb that Caleb doesn't have yet. And they're better at, frankly, right now than him. And I'm aware Tyson, this isn't me saying, someone in the comments is going to take it this way, but this isn't me saying Tyson should start over Caleb or Tyson's the better quarterback. But these are areas, we all know Caleb has an extremely high ceiling, right? But these are areas where Caleb struggles, where you see, even though it's against the second string defense, Tyson executing well. He knows this playbook well, at least it seems so far. He has command of the offense, and he's scanning the field quickly and taking what the defense is giving him. And those are just areas where I'd like to see Caleb improve, because that is going to directly translate, obviously, into the regular season. And once again, this isn't me saying Tyson Bagent is better than Caleb or that he should start over him. This is just me saying those are glaring differences between a quarterback who's in his second year and learning a new system and learning how to not play out of shotgun, and quarterbacks who have a little bit more experience. And it makes those traits that Caleb has to learn or get better at more notable when you have quarterbacks on the roster doing it, because then you can see, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like. And I think Caleb can get there. I think he will. But it's just something that I think as training camp goes on, those are the things I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the interceptions. I'm not looking at, some silly mistakes during practice, because those are going to happen. They should happen. What I'm looking at is, as training camp progresses, as we get closer to the regular season, is Caleb taking command of the offense? Does it seem like he really is leading that huddle? He knows what he's looking for pre-snap. And then when he gets the ball, he knows his reads. He's going through his progressions. He's scanning the defense. He's making adjustments at the line of scrimmage. Because as we get closer to season, that is what is going to matter. That is what is going to allow him to continue to get better and use the special gifts that the football gods gave him. But until he can do that, all the great attributes he has doesn't really matter. So, I mean, of course it matters sometimes, but you guys know what I mean. So those are the things I'm looking for as camp progresses. If we're getting towards the end of training camp and Caleb is still looking like he's a little bit lost, like he's struggling to really command the offense, like he doesn't really fully know the playbook, or still struggling to with his back turned to the defense to read the defense, then either Ben Johnson is going to have to adjust the playbook for Caleb to make it more shotguns and something he's comfortable in until he can get better at that, or the Bears are going to struggle for a bit and Ben Johnson's going to be like, you got to learn on the fly and you got to start getting better at it now. And that's a little worrisome. But that is kind of what leads me into the main topic of this podcast episode today. And that is the Bears' floor and ceiling, because I think how Caleb performs, how the Bears look relies on, or I should say, how the Bears look, of course, relies a lot on Caleb. It relies on a lot of factors. But Caleb Williams is kind of the X factor here, where if he really takes off, this offense is limitless. If he struggles, it could be looking rough for a little bit. So, and of course, it's not all on him, but there's a good chunk on his shoulders. And I kind of wanted to go into the floor and ceiling because I think right now within Bears land, it seems that Bears fans, even though people make fun of us for winning the offseason and all that jazz, it seems like Bears fans for the most part are very much in a wait and see situation right now. I feel like more than ever, I'm noticing Bears fans being like, I think we could win 10 games this season, but like, I'm not getting over hype until I see it because we've been burned too many times. So I think in Bears world, we're actually pretty, from what I see and what I hear, I think we're actually pretty grounded in this. And we're like, let's just wait and see what happens this season. We're excited. We see the potential, but we're like, let's wait and see. Mainstream media, I think, is the one that's really pushing out this narrative that like the Bears are going to be good this year. They have the best offensive line in football, which it's upgraded, but I don't think it's the best by any means, or top 5 like PFF had them. And they're the ones who are like, it's Caleb's, prove it or bust year. If by game 5 he's not proving it, he's not the guy. And I'm like, okay, let's chill out. That's not true. But that being said, I think there's a lot of different opinions on this Bears team. Some people think this Bears team is going to win like 4 games, and some people think this Bears team is going to the freaking Super Bowl. So I figured let's do something fun and let's just talk about the floor and ceiling of the Bears, because I think, unfortunately, this Bears team's floor and ceiling are drastically different. I might even go into talking about the entire NFC North towards the end after giving the Bears floor and ceiling and just talk. Yeah, why not? Let's give the floor and ceiling of each team. I don't have any graphics for this because I didn't plan that in advance, but we're going to give the floor and ceiling in each team. And then you'll see that some of these teams, I think their floor and ceiling is relatively close to each other. But for the Bears, I think it's going to be drastically different. But excuse me. Before I get into that, let me read some of the comments. What is up? Bear down. Squeege. They asked Ben Johnson which part of what Caleb learned last year applies to this season, and nada. Caleb is starting over, so I expect him to struggle at first. Slow, steady progress is perfect. I agree. Yeah, I think a lot isn't carrying over, and there is struggle to be expected. But like I said, I'm looking for the trends of, as we get towards the end of training camp, beginning of the season, there are certain things I'm looking for me to think, okay, I see the improvement. I see Caleb getting better on the things that are going to matter to be an NFL quarterback. So yeah, I agree though. It's not going to happen overnight. Tyson is an NFL QB. I definitely think he's one of the best backups in the league, and I think he has the potential to be a starter in the NFL. I'm really high on Tyson Bagent. I think a lot of Bears fans really like Tyson, and obviously I want Caleb to work out. But I hope for Tyson's sake, that one day he gets the opportunity to be a starter in the NFL, because I do think he has the potential, and if he's actually given first team reps and all of that, it could be really good for him. And now having a season at least one season under Ben Johnson is probably going to be huge for him as a quarterback. So I'm really high on Tyson Bagent, and I hope he has a good career. I think he has insane work ethic, and I think he's pretty dang good. We haven't seen enough of him to say he's for sure a starter in the league, but I hope he eventually gets that opportunity. Charles. Alexis, I'm looking at your cute face and your dirty bear. Bears can eat shit. They ate ass last season. Listen, Charles. I knew you'd like the dirty bear. This is the dirty bear in the corner. And for people who are only listening on Spotify, it's just an old Shecago bear, stuffed polar bear from 1985. That's dirty because he's old. Caleb is not Jameis Winston. Caleb does not turn the ball over and doesn't have mental problems with collapsing. Many losses were close. The overall team just wasn't great. Neither was coaching. I agree. I don't think Caleb's he's not slow with processing. He could be faster, obviously, and he's getting used to it now with playing where he has to turn his back to the defense, which is an adjustment for him. But I don't think he's necessarily like slow when it comes to it. He's just struggling a bit right now. And yeah, last season the turnovers weren't an issue, and if his turnovers go up this year, honestly, that's to be expected because he should have more passing yards, more pass attempts, maybe throwing it into some tighter coverage that might not go his way every time. So I expect he'll probably have more turnovers this year, but if he doesn't and he somehow has more touchdowns, more yards, and the same amount of turnovers or less, then that dude's just a stud, because that would be some crazy numbers. Like if he has 4,000 yards passing and I don't know, 27 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, like, okay. The floor is 4 wins for the Bears. The ceiling would be like 8 wins. They're not a playoff team. We'll see what I have to say about that. After 6 games, the Bears were almost the worst team in history. Listen, the Bears came really close to being like an 8-win team. And I know every team and every season can say, like, if this didn't happen, look at where we'd be. But the Bears had a lot of games last season where, like, the Bears lost the last second to the Packers by having a blocked field goal that technically should have been a penalty on the Packers. That wasn't called. And had that not happened, we would have swept the Packers. We would have beat them both. We would have beat them 2 times, which would have put us at 6 wins. We had the Vikings game that went into overtime. We had the Lions game where Matt Eberflus didn't call a timeout. That would have won us the game. We had the fluke Hail Mary against the Commanders where the Bears were literally winning up until the last second Hail Mary. So, like, if even 3 of those games went our way, that's an 8-win team. So, and who knows where we'd be. We'd probably still have Eberflus and whatever. But that being said, even with the dysfunction we had some opportunities go our way. They're not go our way. But this year, we have a much more difficult schedule. But what gives me some confidence is the way the Bears were close in our division games. So I have hopes for the Bears. Put it that way. But let's get into our floor and ceiling for the Shecago Bears. So, the Shecago Bears made a lot of improvements this offseason, as we know. Got players like Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, who, by the way, even though I'm excited about, I am nervous about his injury history. Just throwing that out there. We drafted Colson Loveland, Luther Burden, and a million other additions were made to this Bears team in the offseason. The biggest one being Ben Johnson is our new freaking head coach. We have Ben Johnson, people, which I'm super excited about. That being said, there's a lot of questions on this team because we just don't know where everything's going to go. And I think that's why our margin is so wide, because the upside is really high when you think about Ben Johnson, the potential of Colston Loveland with Cole Kmet and Romo Dunze and DJ Moore and Luther Burden and shoring up the offensive line, assuming, putting all injuries and everything else aside, assuming everything stays relatively healthy and people really, sorry, I just got a pop up on my screen. I thought everything was about to shut down on me. Assuming everyone stays healthy and things go our way and Caleb adjusts to Ben Johnson's offense quickly, things could go really, really well for the Bears very quickly. I think that's where the ceiling could be higher, because the potential for the Bears is kind of unknown. Like, if things really start clicking, I mean, you could be looking almost as good as the Detroit Lions offense because of our personnel. Like, if things really go in our favor and really start clicking, this offense could be doing really well, and our defense is pretty good. So things could really go well for the Bears to reach their ceiling this year. I'm not saying Super Bowl, but I'm saying they could go really well. Now, if things don't go really well, if Caleb struggles for a bit to learn Ben Johnson's offense, if Caleb really struggles at all with, his processing, or he's still having issues with the deep ball, or the run game is struggling because maybe DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monangai are just not doing it, and we still are missing that X factor at running back. Or maybe the offensive line has injuries that at first glance it looks really good, but because our depth isn't very good on the offensive line, it comes to bite us because we have some injuries on the offensive line. If the defense struggles, if Jalen Johnson gets hurt again, he's a big factor on our defense right now. For the record, anyone who doesn't know, Jalen Johnson is out because of a leg injury he sustained. Non-football injury is what he's currently on, but they're saying they're not overly concerned. He'll be fine by the end of training camp, so we'll see. Or to Charles's point, God forbid Caleb Williams gets injured. Maybe he's not struggling, but maybe he gets injured. That being said, it would be interesting. I would hope we throw in Tyson Bagent to see what we got in him, or, what the NFL has in Tyson Bagent versus Casey Keenum, but we'll see about that. Or really, if anyone got hurt, that would suck, and that could mess up the season. And maybe it just takes the Bears longer than anticipated to really get going. Maybe because of, and that's the factor too, because our schedule is so difficult and the teams we go against are so difficult and our division is so difficult, maybe things are going okay and they're slowly acclimating to Ben Johnson's system and everything else, but just the schedule and the teams we go against are so hard that it's not enough. And we're losing close games and we're not getting demolished. We're not, looking terrible, but we're not able to accomplish what we want because the teams we're going against are just more prepared and have more consistency going into the season than we did. So, all that being said, let's assume that in the scenario where the Bears offense takes longer to get acclimated, where maybe Caleb struggles a bit, or the defense is underperforming or what have you, and it's just not clicking on all cylinders yet, and maybe we realize we still have some key pieces missing, I think the Bears' floor is 5 wins. I think I'm not going to go lower than last season because I find it extremely hard to believe, even with the strength of schedule we have right now, that we get less than 5 wins this season. Especially with Ben Johnson, I just don't see that happening. There's a lot of buy-in. I think some of the games we lost last year too were simply because the team gave up. They gave up on their head coach. They weren't bought in anymore. And they weren't going to put their health on the line for that team. I think the buy-in is there now. I think Ben Johnson has already won over the offense and defense, and you get some win under your belt, and that'll do that. So I find it hard to believe that the Bears are going to lose more games than they lost last year. So I'm going to have our floor at 5 wins. Same as last year. Not really an improvement, but, all things considered, I don't know. I guess it's okay. Now, let's say things start clicking on all cylinders. Things start going really well. We still have a really tough division. We still have a really tough strength of schedule. We still have some we still have some bumps along the road of learning a new offensive system with a new head coach, and Ben Johnson will have some bumps in being a head coach for the first time. But even with those, things start clicking really fast for this Bears team, and Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, and chemistry is building quick, and Colston Loveland and Luther Burden are immediate playmakers on this team and immediate difference makers. Then I think the Bears ceiling, put it at 11 wins. I was going to say 10. But I think 11 wins. Let's push it over the top a little bit. Let's be a little fun. Let's go 11 wins and say that this Bears team, if all things are clicking on all cylinders, their ceiling could be 11 wins, which I think is very obvious that there's a very big difference between 5 wins and 11 wins. And unfortunately, that's where I think our floor and ceiling is, which I also think is fair. Why most people have the Bears finishing last in the division in their predictions right now, because right now you probably would pick the Bears to finish last in the division because they're the most unknown team right now. But if things really go well, we could easily see ourselves fighting for that second or first spot, depending on, how much the Lions regress, depending on how J.J. McCarthy operates with the Vikings, depending on injuries across the NFC North. So it really depends. But I think the Bears' floor and ceiling is quite contrast. But we'll see. Now, where does that put us? I kind of already hinted at it with the Bears being potentially last in the division. What are the floor and ceilings for the rest of the NFC North? I'm probably not going to go as deep dive into each one, but that being said, let's start with the what do we want to start with? Let's start with let's start with the Packers. I was going to save them for later, but the Packers are the team with the least amount of question marks, I'd say, heading into this season. They have the most consistency, coaching-wise, player-wise. Not a lot has changed on their end. But, and, they always talk about, we have the youngest roster, and they've had the youngest roster for like 3 years, and okay. But they also don't have, these huge difference makers on their team, right? They don't have any, huge blue-chip players on their team that have really stepped up to the plate yet. They still have Matt LaFleur, who's a good head coach, a good play caller. Jordan Love, who had a bit of a rougher season last season with the turnover problems and getting injured. And their defense is okay. Their secondary is not great, especially now that they got rid of Jair Alexander. Their secondary is really not great. So I think the Packers, my thing with the Packers is they could end, we kind of already know who they are. The Packers are probably roughly a guaranteed 7-win team, I would say. But the thing with the Packers is because all the other teams are question marks, that could work to the Packers' advantage and disadvantage. The Packers could do really well, finish as an 11-win team, and go to the playoffs, and probably not make it far in the playoffs, but make it to the playoffs. However, let's say the prophecy comes to fruition of the Bears, everything clicking on all cylinders, the Bears are an 11-win team, right? Where does that put the Packers? Because I think the Vikings are going to be good this year. I think the Lions will have a bit of a fall off, but they're not going to drastically fall off the face of the earth. I think the Packers are the odd man out. I think in that case, they don't have the talent, the newness that these other teams have that are really going to push them over the top, and the Packers potentially fall to the bottom. And I also think the Packers sometimes are a little unprepared or lacking in the motivation department, or I don't know. Sometimes you just watch the Packers in certain games and they just look like they should win this game, but they're just not there, mentally, or they're being coached like they weren't prepping for the week, or I don't know. It's weird. So in that case, I think the floor for the Packers is 7 wins. I think I think they're probably roughly at least a 7-win team. I think their ceiling is probably 12 wins. I think, unfortunately, if the Bears things don't go well and we start losing, and let's say the Packers sweep the Bears, then that gives them 2 wins right there. And then within the NFC North, if they get a win and split with the other teams, they could be a 12-win team. However, the Packers almost got swept by the entire NFC North last year. For how much crap the Packers talk, or how much they talk themselves up, and they're like, we could win 12 games this year, or we could win 13-win team. And I'm like, did you forget that the NFC North is your division and that you almost got swept by the entire division last year? And now this year, the schedule is even harder and the teams we play are even harder. So, like, the chances of you actually being like a 13-win team are probably slim. And I think this kind of applies to each team in the NFC North, is that our schedules are hard this year. So I really think that I don't think we're going to have the way last season we had 13-win teams fighting for a wild card spot. I don't think it's going to be that this year. I think it's going to be lower win totals, and it's going to actually be a bloodbath in the NFC North fighting for that first spot. I think just because of the strength of schedule, and the Lions will have a bit of a fall off after losing losing their offensive defensive coordinators to become head coaches. I think that I think it's going to be a really tough division to win first in. I think it's going to be close with all 4 teams, honestly. But that being said, I think the Packers are probably floor 7 wins, ceiling 12 wins. For the Vikings are interesting because they also haven't had a whole lot of changes in the offseason. They're also pretty consistent. They also have a good head coach, a quarterback whisperer. Their big question mark is J.J. McCarthy. They have a rookie quarterback starting. He's technically in year 2, but he didn't play at all last season. And I think there's a lot of optimism across the NFL, and especially within Vikings fandom, about J.J. McCarthy. But is he as good as they have or as good as they hope he will be? We don't know. And I do think there's potential for J.J. McCarthy to have a relatively good, maybe even great first season starting with Kevin O'Connell, because he has such good weapons. He has a good offensive line. He has a good play caller. He has a good head coach. And then maybe as the next year and the year after that go on, people start to figure out J.J. McCarthy's tendencies, things like that, and he turns out to just be like an average to slightly above average quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a bust, but I think maybe he'll come out strong and people will be like, J.J. McCarthy, and then he might taper off a little bit. But that being said, he's probably going to have some bumps and bruises along the way. And if he's playing some good defenses, the hope is that some of these rookie struggles come to hit him. And maybe he's not as good as Vikings fans are hyping him up to be, and he struggles a bit because that works in the rest of the NFC North's favor. But all that being said, there's really not a lot of flaws on this Vikings team. I mean, they have a solid defense, a good defensive coordinator, like one of the best defenses in the league, and they have some great skill players on offense, and all it comes down to is if J.J. McCarthy could be a good quarterback. All he really has to do is distribute the football. So the Vikings are interesting, but I'm going to go ahead and put them at a floor of, I'm going to give them a floor of 8 above the Packers. I'm going to say their floor is probably 8 wins. That actually might be a little bold with a rookie quarterback, though. No, I'm going to give them 7. Floor is 7 wins as well, just because of the J.J. McCarthy factor of it all. And I'm going to say their ceiling is probably 13 wins. I'll say their ceiling is 13 wins because they have all the talent, and if J.J. McCarthy clicks, it's not going to be hard for the Vikings to win games. Now they are going against some tough opponents like the rest of us in the NFC North are this year, including our own division. But I would say floor for the Vikings, 7 wins. Because they have the talent to get them through, even with J.J. McCarthy struggles. Ceiling 13 wins, because I think they could be a 13, even maybe 14-win team if things really start going well for them. Now, for the Lions. The Lions are very interesting. I think they had the most change, besides the Bears, I guess, in the NFC North, in terms of losing their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. And on top of that, they've already had some injuries. They've had a player retire. They've had a rule a player out for the rest of the season already. But we all know that the Lions have the personnel. They have players on the defense. Aiden Hutchinson should be back this season, although I think he might be off to a little bit more of a slow start, and then he'll pick up as the season goes on, as he comes back from injury. But their offense, they have a ton of personnel skill players. We know that. So the Lions have the talent on their team to perform well. However, where I see the Lions struggling is, you know how last season, or really any season with Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell's an aggressive play caller coach, right? He trusts the coordinators and the players to do their job. And I think we don't know how good the coordinators are going to be for the Lions this year on offense or defense. And I don't think Dan Campbell is going to change his mindset. He's going to continue to be aggressive. He's going to continue to push the envelope. And where I think some faults are going to come is you're not going to have Ben Johnson's scheme to get you out of things. I think they're going to have some fourth down conversions that don't go their way, and it costs them games because they decide to be bold and go for it because that's what they've always done, but they're missing a key piece on that, and it's going to cost them maybe a game or two. And I don't really know what their defense looks like with the new coordinator. I don't imagine drastic changes, but they could potentially be not as good as it was with Aaron Glenn. So the Lions, I don't think they're going to have a very dramatic fall off. I actually think, if anything, they're going to start the season maybe doing all right. And where they're going to start to fall off is going to be towards the middle to the end of the season, when it starts getting harder. You start having some injuries pile up, and you don't have the Ben Johnson effect anymore. And I think that might be where things start getting in trouble. And also, we know Jared Goff, when he plays the Bears, tends to turn the ball over. And actually, Jared Goff ended the season last year, even though Jared Goff relatively was a very good quarterback the past few years. He, when he does turn the ball over, he really turns the ball over. Like at the end of the season against the Commanders, he turned the ball over like 3 times, maybe even more than that. So I think Goff now losing a center and losing another offensive lineman and being under duress a little bit more, and without Ben Johnson's mastermind, I think we're going to see a little bit more turnovers for Jared Goff, a little bit more struggle offensively from the Lions. I don't think they're going to be the dominating offense that they have been the past few years. Even though they have the skilled players to make up for some of that, I don't think we're going to see the same Lions offense that we've seen. So, all of that being said, it's really hard to figure out where the Lions will be, because they could have way more of a dramatic fall off than we anticipate. So, because of that, I'm going to make their floor a little bit lower and say their floor is, I'm going to say their floor is 6 wins. Because the Lions, even though the NFC North in general has a really tough schedule, that's also another factor. The Lions played against some easier teams last season. This season is not going to be the case. The division got better. The Bears got better. Like, it's not going to be a walk in the park. And they won the division, so they have the tougher schedule. And they've lost 2 coordinators. Like, I think the Lions' floor, if things really start falling apart for them, could be 6 wins, to be honest. Now, their ceiling, I'm going to put them at 13. I think they're kind of like the Bears. I think they have a very big swing scale here. I think if they manage to survive and thrive without Ben Johnson and Glenn Allen and Aaron Glenn, then I think they could be all right. And I think they could make it to a 13-win team and be right back on top of the division. But if things really start to fall apart for them, then we could be looking at a 6-win Lion team, especially with their strength of schedule and everything else. So The floor and ceiling, I would feel for the Packers and the Vikings are probably closer together. For the Bears and Lions, I feel like there's a big pendulum. And honestly, even for the Vikings, you could argue that it could be bigger. But like, I think I personally have more faith in Kevin O'Connell that he's going to be able to get the best out of JJ McCarthy. And they have so many skill players on that team and a good offensive line that like JJ really doesn't have to do much to, like, he would have to do more to F it up, you know? So I don't know. But the gist of it is the NFC North is going to be one of the toughest divisions in football, and it's also a giant question mark. I think one of the teams in the North is going to fall off at some point. Hopefully it's not the Bears, because that's been the trend the past few years. But at some point, one of the teams in the NFC North is going to start to pile up losses, and it's inevitable because we play each other. We're not all going to split every single game. So at some point, some of these teams are going to start suffering some losses. And depending when injury bugs hit, depending on how quarterbacks like Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy perform, it could make or break the season. And I think there's a lot of unknowns with this division right now. And I think the reason the Packers right now are seen so high in the division is because they're the only team where we kind of know what they are. That also comes to their fault. We know what they are. Their ceiling is kind of their ceiling. They don't have a huge upside where you're like, but they could reach this. It's kind of like, we know what the Packers are. But the Bears, the Vikings, the Lions, those are question marks. Curtis, I saw Curtis say, what is up? What YouTube up to now with this purple thing? What's the purple thing? I don't think I see it on my end. I don't know what that is. What is it? Incentive for engagement. Let me try. Oh, yeah, I can't see that on my end. So if YouTube's just testing out more interactive things, I know at one point they were doing something where like, I think if I go like that, it'll like do something on your screen to tell you to like the video. Let me know if it's doing it or if I'm just doing this and it does nothing. Maybe this is pointless, but I think they added that. I could be wrong. Curtis with the $5 super chat. Get new tires before winter. I appreciate you. I have not gotten new tires yet. For anyone who's watched my streams last year on the NFL live streams, which I do every season, there was a running thing. How I was talking about how my tires are really bad and I need new tires, and I never got new tires. And now I really need new tires before this winter comes. So, thank you, Curtis, for the $5 super chat. It is going towards the new tires and the cost of these platforms that I have to stream on, which reminds me, if anyone is ever wondering, like, what do these super chats and things like that go towards and what's the purpose of it? Things like this season, I talked about at the start of the podcast that I'm doing this podcast. I'm also doing the Irish Bears podcast. I am also introducing a new podcast, and I'm also going live for every primetime game, or at least almost every primetime game. So, and Bears games as well. So that's a lot of free content. If you enjoy this content, it's, stuff I use my free time to do, to film. And on top of that, I pay to do this. Like, I have to pay for the streaming software. I have to pay for the audio and the interface, and I have to pay for the camera, and I have to pay for the subscription on Twitch, on Twitter, on everything else to be able to stream directly from the streaming platform. Like, everything I do costs money to do this. And on top of that, all the content I put out is free, unless it's on Patreon, which I'll be adding more stuff to my Patreon this year. Which if you want to eventually subscribe to that, it does help me out because I post bonus content on there, which then helps also with just essentially paying for the fees of getting the show freaking running. And on top of that, just, helping pay for the time that it takes to do all this stuff and the editing software and programs you pay for to do it, like everything. So, and it's just a sign of support in general for, giving up the free time and the free content. So appreciate it. If anyone ever wonders what that goes towards, at least for me and my channel, that's the gist of it. And we have running jokes about, like buying tires and the fun towards buying the Bears. But the reality is what I said. But, we have fun jokes about like all the funds and what they go towards. But people have numbers. Bye, Curtis. Thank you for joining. What are the numbers meaning? See, those are things I'm not seeing on my end. I can't see what you guys see in terms of getting numbers or something. That's interesting. I have a purple number 1 balloon with a crown by my name in the chat. Okay, yeah, it must be something new. What do you actually spend your money on? Sweaters? Yeah, just more sweaters. I think it's 90 degrees outside for anyone who's only listening right now. I'm in a sweater because I got my AC on and I have iced coffee and it makes me cold. But I do appreciate some guy named Dave. Thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate anyone who contributes in any way. It's much appreciated. And also, I have a whiteboard that I left in the other room that I'm going to have for the season that I'm going to like put stuff on and draw on. Maybe some fun things, maybe just mess around, whatever, during games. Maybe I'll throw the score up on there. And then also I'll probably throw in like if there's super chats over $50 or something like that, I'll like throw their name on the whiteboard during the stream or something. So I think that's what we're going to do this season as well. So that's the plans. But that's my kind of breakdown of the NFC North and the floor ceiling of each team. Now, that could even change going into the regular season, depending on reports out of training camps, on injury statuses, things like that, after all the preseason games. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. And when is the Bears' first preseason game? It's coming up. Preseason. Isn't it August? August 10th. So next Sunday, a week from today. Oh, sorry, not next Sunday. 2 weeks from today, the Bears' first preseason game is upon us. I think next Saturday or Sunday is Family Fest or whatever. So if you're going to that, I used to go to those. They're fun. But I think that's that weekend. And then after Family Fest is the Bears game. So 2 weeks from today, we have the first Bears preseason game of the year, Sunday against Miami Dolphins. And it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out on how Ben Johnson decides to play starters, when and where. He did mention that he puts a lot of emphasis on the joint practices, which we will have with the Bills and with the Dolphins. That makes me a little concerned that he's going to have starters sit out more because of the joint practices. And I personally don't like that. I think you still need the in-game reps. You still need to be hit. Like, you need to warm your body up to getting hit and the effort it takes each game. And I think that's why you get slow starts if you're not playing some of your starters. I get you don't want to risk injury, but like, I also feel like you risk injury by having them start after not playing for however many months. And then you throw them in week 1, just getting pounded all the time. So in my opinion, you play your starters at least a decent amount the first few games of preseason and then let them rest up before the first week. But that's just my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how Ben Johnson does it and what he chooses to do for the preseason. But that's coming up. So we'll see it soon. And I assume sometime next week, we'll start getting the answers on what his plans are for the starters coming up against the Miami Dolphins. And the joint practices will be next week. So that's also something to look at. It'll be interesting to see. I feel like the joint practices are usually a good indication for how the offense and defense are looking when you see them against, other teams. But it's also still training camp. So you're not really giving too much away to the other teams or to the NFL with them. But either way, it'll be interesting. So that is what we got for today's podcast episode. And soon enough, we will be here. Actually, guys, in a month from today, we're going to be like a week away from the first Bears game of the season, which is crazy. Also, guys, it's my birthday month next month. So my birthday is coming up in a few weeks, if anyone cares. Not that I really care that much. I don't know why I'm bringing it up, but I'm just turning another year older. But it is my birthday month coming up. So hopefully the Bears do us a solid and stay healthy during my birthday month, please. And yeah, I plan on doing Happy upcoming birthday. Thank you. I plan on doing another podcast this week. During the regular season, I'm going to try to be doing more. I don't, because I'm kind of spreading myself thin with being part of another podcast and having another one on my channel, and the fact that the Bears, the NFL has added so many days of the week now where there's games. Like there's Saturday games, there's Sunday games, there's Friday games, there's Thursday games, there's Monday games. Like it makes it really hard to then also do recap pre-podcast, post-podcast when it's just me operating it all. So I'm going to try to do a few Shecago podcast episodes a week, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do a pre and post breakdown every single week. I'm going to try to maybe rope them into with the Irish Bears podcast and kind of cover both bases with that. But I will be trying to do more than just one Shecago episode a week on the Bears. So, but on top of that, you will have the live streams of live streaming games and live streaming Bears games and NFL games. So we'll have that, and then we'll have the Shecago, and then we'll have my other podcast, and then we'll have the Irish Bears podcast. So we got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of me to go around. So if you don't like me, now is not the time to subscribe to my channel. but if you enjoy my content, then please subscribe and like the video so other people see it, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the stuff. And I also do post on the community tab on here. So if there's ever updates or for some reason I get sick or something happens, I'm not able to go live, I'll try to tweet about it and post it on the community tab. Or if I decide to do a random live or bonus content or whatever, I'll also post it there. So on the community tab. So check that out too. Don't forget to do that. And turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. But as the season gets going, once I figure out the swing of things with the Irish Bears podcast, with my own stuff and with the NFL schedule, I'll try to get in a more consistent, like on this day is the Shecago podcast episodes and so forth. But kind of need to wait for everything to shake out first. So until then, but I appreciate everyone for tuning in. I appreciate your patience as I get the exact time and dates and everything more consistently solidified. But until then, I appreciate you all for watching. Anyone who's commented, anyone who's left a super chat, much appreciated. I hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday and hope for good health for your teams. And I will see you all for the next Shecago podcast episode. And stay tuned for my other one coming out soon. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Alexis Jade. This has been the Shecago podcast, where we talk the Chicago Bears. See you soon.